Why, hello. It's the PHN Pens Regroup doing something a little different today, giving you guys a placeholder. Do you like my penmanship here? Penguins 4, Rangers 2. About to welcome in Dan Kingerski here. Let's do it, and let's get it rolling on our live chat here. We're on YouTube, of course. As you all know, there is Dan. He joins us now. Right in the flow of things, on the fly, Mr. Kingerski. Thanks for joining me.
Well, I've been waiting on the bench for a few minutes. Thanks for opening the gate.
You got it. You are in a different place today. Look at this. Where are you?
I am hiding out in the suburbs of Greensburg at my parents' house, actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's where the family was basically foisted upon the Pittsburgh community. As you saw here, there you go. 3 straight regulation wins for the Penguins. That's my number one headline because they hadn't done it yet this season. So they finally didn't give up points to a division rival. And of course, every game's against a division rival. So regulation wins take on an increased importance in a season like this, don't they?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And you talk about 3 straight regulation wins, as well as the Penguins played defensively on Sunday. When they really they absorbed a lot from New York on Sunday. They squashed the shots and the scoring chances. Well, they evened things out on Tuesday night when they just kind of, I don't know where the Penguins went in the third period. They had 1 shot on goal, and that was Sidney Crosby's empty netter. So to that point, they had 0 shots on goal. Matt, I thought in addition to the ridiculous 21 pass, 22 touch goal that Malkin, Kapanen, Letang, Dumoulin, and Evan Rodriguez scored. In addition to that and the regulation win, I thought really the co-big story was Tristan Jarry last night.
Yeah, I have a hard time disputing that because he's been on a consistent rise, but we saw him late. He's the only reason that game didn't go beyond regulation time, and we had to see another situation where the Penguins cough up a point to a division rival. And well, the stop on Buchnevich might have been his best, but there were several there in the final minutes. But he's been coming on. Like I said, that win against the Flyers on Saturday, too, he had to make a couple of strong stops as well. It's not like the Penguins are necessarily playing that much tighter. That's at least my perception here defensively. But he's definitely playing on a consistent rise.
Where'd you go, Matt?
Sorry, I'm still here.
Okay.
I heard a little echo in my ear there, but I was saying,
I put up the live chat so I can see the comments.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, and we do have plenty of comments. We want to get to those too. But as I was saying, I'm not sure the Penguins are necessarily playing that much better defensively. But yeah, the offense is clicking and the goaltending is better. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. And if there's one position on the ice that can lead to better results with a little bit of an uptick in play, it's certainly goaltender.
Well, yeah, let's not undersell what the Penguins have done defensively recently either. They really have. Maybe they haven't been shut down dominant like we tend to think of. But what they've done instead is get between themselves, put themselves between the puck and the goal. And they've counterattacked and they've attacked even with the lead. So it might look like they're, say, quote, playing offense. That's actually a good defense a lot of times too. So let's not undersell what they've done to the Flyers and the Rangers, except for the third period, of course, on Tuesday night.
Well, your point is certainly valid there in terms of they're not giving up as many scoring chances. I think still they'd probably like to spend a little more time in the offensive end of the rink, but with the exception of last night was an outlier in this recent trend, but with the exception of last night, previous to that, they had outchanced their opponents in 4 straight at 5-on-5. And lest we forget, as Sidney Crosby mentioned in the postgame last night too, special teams. It's a little redundant at times, especially when it comes to the power play. But, well, you see last night a shorthanded goal even. Those are allowed too. Those can make a difference. We've seen Tanev score one recently, and now we see Teddy Bluger cash one and help the Penguins get a nice lead. But special teams overall has been better on the results side and also in the process side. So you add those two things together, and it's no surprise they've been able to climb the standings. That's now 10 out of 14 that they've won, and their last 4 wins have all come in regulation time. So I don't want to skip over special teams either. It's, there are these huge little bellwether moments in a season here. And I think back to the Saturday game against the Flyers. The Saturday afternoon, the Flyers score early off a terrible turnover from Sam Lafferty, not to pick on him, but it was a bad play, 2-0. But then the Penguins scored 2 power play goals in that first period. And we might be looking back on that moment there where they have that breakthrough. They get things going on the power play. It does feel like that could be a real turning point in this season.
I hadn't circled that as any great shakes, but it's certainly one of those moments over the last week or 10 days that you can. I actually, maybe it's personality trait. I don't know if it is the same way that the team is. I circled the game they lost against Philadelphia when they had the 3-0 lead and they scored the 3 goals in 71 seconds and completely took their foot off the gas. And it really was such a reminder to that team that they are good, but you can't perform at half mast. I think that's been the biggest lesson. And one of the hockey coaches that I speak with frequently told me before the season, he's like, this Penguins team is going to have the biggest challenge they've had ever because they can no longer win games without being at their absolute best. And that sort of sticks with me now. When the Penguins have their B game, they tend to make it a C game instead of making it an A game in certain moments. And I thought that was prescient. And the Philadelphia loss might have been the kick in the butt that they needed as well, because they came out and dominated the Rangers in the next game in a lot of minutes, and then took it to the Rangers for 30 minutes last night before that crept in again. And I think that will be a lesson that they needed to learn. And for the playoff chase, probably a good lesson.
And remember, too, the Rangers have been playing better. I know their position in the standings isn't great, but they had won 3 in a row coming into this mini series against the Pens. They lose 2 in a row now, but they look better than they did earlier in the year. So I give David Quinn and the coaching staff and some of their young players credit for stepping up and looking a lot more dangerous. They certainly can step through the open door if you allow them. Let's look to some comments here. Faye, whatever, we'll go with that, says Dumoulin coming back is wonders for our defense. That I wanted to address with you as well, because I think just because of the complementary nature of Dumoulin's game, particularly when he's playing with Chris Letang, allows me to not appreciate his value when he's out of the lineup. When he's in the lineup, I'm always saying, oh, wow, that's a nice little play there. That relieves some pressure. That allowed the Penguins to get out of their zone, or maybe he makes a play in the offensive zone, maybe a little bit more of a skating defenseman than I give him credit for too at times. But when he does return and he looks healthy, he's missed so many games the last 2 years, but when he looks healthy, when he's moving around well, it's hard to find more of a glue guy on this team. And all you have to do is look at Chris Letang's results and how much more comfortable he appears to be and how much more productive he is when he has number 8 with him. So the return of Dumoulin, also a possible turning point from this past weekend for me.
Well, Sidney Crosby mentioned that as well. You talked about his post-game comments. I didn't know I was going first with Sid last night. It's one of those, oh, they're going to go to me first. Okay. He specifically mentioned the special teams, but also getting healthy. Brian Dumoulin is the one Penguins defenseman over the last couple or a few years who hasn't gotten lost in Chris Letang's game. You can spend so much time reading Letang or reacting to Letang that you lose your own game. Dumoulin seems to intuitively know how to fill in those spaces when Letang gambles or aggressively attacks the puck. Dumoulin can do those sorts of things, and that makes Letang so much better as well. So that's probably the biggest thing for the Penguins going forward, is to make sure Brian Dumoulin stays healthy, or at least find a second defenseman with a left-handed shot who can play there, because it has been so good, so effective, but also so stabilizing for the team.
Keith Thomas asks on our live chat, and please, you can go ahead and join in. It's right there on the right side of the screen if you're watching on YouTube along with us. He asks, can someone help me out with Evan Rodriguez being on Malkin's line? Is it due to him being more defensively minded and responsible? My thought, Dan, is just that Mike Sullivan does not want to disrupt several lines in trying to replace Jared McCann. If we're talking about health and increasing health, there's that one caveat. It's a shame because McCann, I thought, was playing great. I think he and Kapanen and Malkin can be a dynamite second line. But as far as Rodriguez goes, he can fill in a pinch. And you want to keep Kapanen and Malkin together. You want to keep the top line together with Rust and Gensel on the flanks of Crosby too. So that's my theory on that one, at least. I don't think it's necessarily that maybe Rodriguez is the best fit in a top six, but that's what they have right now. And you don't want to try to break down the entire car if you just have, a flat tire on one side.
Well, that's exactly right. That's always been Sullivan's go-to. Plus, Evan Rodriguez has a certain offensive pedigree. He hasn't really shown it in the NHL, but he played some top 6 minutes with his former college teammate, Jack Eichel. He has some hands and he has some ability in the offensive zone. He is good defensively. He's quick. So sure, you kind of plug him in there, especially to keep that Aston Reese, Bluger, Tanev line together, which is so dynamic. The three of them together are clearly better than the sum of their parts. So if you can do that without shuffling all, 3 or 4 lines, that's what you do.
A couple of comments here on the fourth line. One from John Gorman saying it's still a rough watch. Medina, hi Medina, good to see you. One of our loyal viewers. She asks, if Hextall makes a move, do you see it being someone who will bolster the fourth line? And I might add a parenthetical there and say, just bolster the forward depth. I feel like that's got to be the move there. We've talked about productive toughness here on our last Penguins regroup on the channel. So I don't necessarily need to rehash that. But the fourth line does continue to stick out, and it does continue to basically not get used by Mike Sullivan. We saw Colton Sevier get placed on waivers. No one picked him up. He's back dressed and skating for the Penguins less than 24 hours later. So it does appear that Hextall is fishing a little bit here. I do wonder what's in the works. Of course, we could find out very shortly what's in the works if there is anything. But as far as I'm concerned, that's the number one priority there is bottom six at the moment. I think the top six, at least if McCann's healthy, the top six is good. But beyond that, there's still a gaping spot there as far as depth is concerned.
Well, you're absolutely right. They need to fortify, not depth, Matt. I think a more surgical addition would be prudent. If you're going to spend what limited resources you've got, you're going to have to get somebody that you believe can come in and play right away on that fourth line, not just as a body, but adding a specific skill set, adding a specific job, or bringing a certain dish to the potluck dinner, as it were. Whether that's a ham-handed guy who can still skate and play some hockey like an Austin Watson or a Delorier in Anaheim, whether it's more tenacity, and a guy who can win faceoffs like a Luke Glendening in Detroit, whatever it is, there are plenty of depth guys around the league, but you have to be a little more surgical than just getting better depth. You want to be able to plug those in and build something rather than just improve, so to speak.
Well, I've been guilty of just pigeonholing myself to thinking about wingers on the bottom six, but could it be a center? Could it be someone like, I don't know, Buffalo's open for business apparently. Eric Stahl, anybody? Let
me stop you there. Eric Stahl will be way too expensive. Some team is going to snag him for second line center price because that's really what he is and what he can be. The Penguins don't have that kind of capital in their back pocket.
Yeah, and I would also caution folks to not just devalue these guys like a Stahl because they're playing on a team that's not giving them much support in Buffalo. Not to absolve Eric Stahl of any blame for the Sabres 5-on-5 struggles. They're a black hole, both offensively and defensively at even strength. But he's still a player. He's still someone, like you said, who I think another team could look at and say, if we give him some support here, even in his mid to late 30s, he could still be potentially a second line type of guy. But I did see that thrown out there in the chat. So I wanted to bring up Stahl, throw some red meat to the folks there. He's a player I've always liked too. I'm partial to the big bodies who can play, and yeah, especially down the middle, as we saw with his brother here for so many years. Man, Jordan Staal would be a nice a nice look too, but Carolina's got a good thing going on. So John Smith continues with this one, and that's where I guess we can conclude with the trade talk. What do you think is the best caliber of player that the Penguins can acquire? Could they feasibly find someone? Do they have enough capital to find someone to play alongside Malkin or Crosby?
It's going to depend on Jason Zucker, actually, Matt.
Yeah.
His status. If he's coming back, let's say early April, then the Penguins don't have a lot of money. But if he's not coming back until, let's say, later April, and you can kind of keep him hidden on the injured list until May, then you've got $5, $6, even kind of $7 million to play with. So therein would be a big Penguins, I guess, a what if question. And if they do have $5 or $6 million, then it's a buyer's market, because so many teams would love to shed a player who makes that kind of money, not because the player is bad or they need to get rid of him, but because so many teams have hemorrhaged money on the business side this year, Matt. There were a group of owners, and PHN really was on the front edge of reporting this before the season got underway, the NHLPA, the NHL negotiations. There were a group of owners, we believe to be led by Boston's Jeremy Jacobs, but maybe he was just one of a handful or more, who didn't want the season because they realized they would lose less money sitting on their hands than they would actually playing, because so many of these owners have their hands in the hospitality industry or financial sectors that have been rocked by the past 12, 13 months. So they would love to shed a salary of $5 or $6 million, which creates a buyer's market. In that sense, perhaps the Penguins do part with something they don't want to part with, but get a lot more in return. I could see that sort of thing happening, but again, a lot is dependent on Zucker's health.
And we won't find out much about that for at least a couple of weeks, you would think, although the Penguins know much more about it than we do. So at least they can operate from that side, from the side of having a little bit more information. Well, it's March the 10th. Typically we have maybe 15 games left in the NHL season, possibly 20. This time around, it's closer to 30. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but the Penguins have moved into third place here. They're just behind the Capitals in second and the Islanders in first. The Bruins continue to drop off. And the Penguins actually have a game in hand on the Islanders. I didn't realize that. So it's not looking so bleak anymore. It's so funny. After that blown lead, 5-6 days ago against Philadelphia, the Penguins lose that one in regulation, get no points out of that. You could easily have talked me into believing that they were going to miss the playoffs and that they were going to sink out of contention here. It's funny what a difference 6 days can make. That's where we are.
Well, Matt,
right
take a look at the standings, though. There's still an underlying problem. The Penguins might be in third place, but they have the fifth best winning percentage. Mm-hmm. So if things continue to shake out upon the current path, both the Islanders and Boston would be ahead, or not the Islanders, the Flyers and Boston would be ahead of them. And they're still, depending on what tiebreakers you want, or how you want to look at the standings, they're still kind of in fifth place in my mind. They have to string more wins together. They have to win both up in Buffalo. Doesn't matter. They can go to a shootout in Buffalo and they can give points to the Sabres without it hurting them. But they have to come away with 3, but probably 4 points.
7 of the next 9 against either the Sabres or the Devils. The Devils aren't the Sabres. The Sabres are just a gaping hole at this moment. They are a crater. But as far as the Devils are concerned, that's not going to be terribly easy, but it's still a softening schedule, no doubt about it. So if there is one, you talk about literal tiebreakers. If you're talking about metaphorical tiebreakers, maybe the Penguins have that, at least over the next, 3 or 4 weeks. Then, of course, they finish with Buffalo. So, but about 5 weeks into the future, they will have played the Devils. Oh my goodness, all 8 times. So eight Devils matchups coming up in the next 5 weeks. And then you have 3 separate series against the Sabres. That's 6 times against Buffalo. Could set them up pretty well for a closing stretch that goes Boston, Washington, Philadelphia, and then Buffalo. But that's way too far in the future to really think about right now. But I'm just letting you know, things have changed, and it does seem like there's more reason for optimism here. One of those reasons, nice segue here, into a post you had last night, Dan, highlighting the third goal for the Penguins, the Kasperi Kapanen goal there, culminating, 21 consecutive passes. I think you said 22 consecutive puck touches for the Penguins. He and Malkin have appeared to have found something. It's just kind of funny. All the wingers the Penguins bring in for top 6, they seem to settle with Malkin as opposed to Crosby. Sid likes his old reliables, and maybe Malkin finds something in the new arrivals. Do you think it's more just Malkin raising his level? Because that certainly happened recently. Or has Kapanen maybe found something as well in recent games?
Yes.
Yes to both.
It has played significantly better since Mike Sullivan put him on the pine. That's really, I cringe when I get all these comments on my, on different posts. Oh, Sullivan's the problem. Fire Mike Sullivan. You just look at how he handles players. And sure, I mean, look, Scotty Bowman had a few players that he put on a bus and sent out of town who were good players for whatever reason. Good coaches just seem to, every coach, I should say, seems to do that. But it just so happened a couple popular Penguins players found themselves out of town. Mike Sullivan handles his team still very, very well. I think the last week or so has shown what a good tactician he is as well. And he's getting the most out of Kapanen, whereas, say, maybe Sheldon Keefe in Toronto didn't get that same output from Kapanen last season, when Kapanen just shuffled all around the lineup and only scored 13 goals when all was said and done. Yes, Kapanen is playing very hard, and I think he's learning how to play without the puck. That's an important thing when you play with Evgeny Malkin, because Malkin plays with the puck. So you have to learn how to get to space. You have to learn those little nuances and how to make yourself available, and then move to a different spot if Malkin doesn't give it to you when you're expecting it or when you want it, and learn how to get to the net and transition and play defense and all of those things. It's a little bit more complicated to play with Evgeny Malkin. So yeah, they're developing chemistry, I think, as Kapanen figures it out. And Matt, as Malkin gets his legs, Malkin is, I see him as significantly better on his skates than he was 3 weeks ago, when he looked a little bit stuck in the mud, a little bit like he was in the quicksand. Now he's got that edge on his blades, and he's moving, he's pressuring defenses, and it's opened up his game. So those two things combined, I think, are starting to create something that the Penguins desperately wanted when they acquired Kapanen.
Well, and it's funny how, as Malkin looks and feels better, I'm assuming physically, he's thinking better too. What was the Vince Lombardi quote about fatigue that makes cowards of us all? I think he just wasn't in great enough shape to play capable NHL hockey, at least at the level that we're used to seeing from Malkin, or somewhere close to it. But now that he's looking spry, he's feeling light on his feet. You see him also moving the puck quickly, working some give and goes. The shift in the offensive zone last night that led to the goal is a prime example of that. But early success for Malkin and Kapanen seemed to be a lot on just Malkin sending Kapanen away on breakaway passes and breakout passes. But now the two are working more in tandem, and we're seeing just the entire line function better as a unit, the entire 5-man unit out there functioning better in tandem, as opposed to Malkin just freelancing. So it's really interesting how, as one goes, so goes the other. And he appears to be a smarter player when he's also a more in shape player. That's typically how it goes. But with him, a man who tends to ride confidence, I sense, more than a lot of NHL players. It's even more so, and he's in a good vein of form now. So the Penguins can hope to ride that. Now they just look more like they were supposed to look when they have two lines that are clicking. I know the third and especially the fourth, we could stand to see a little bit of improvement there, see some more consistent play. But at the same time, they can win a lot of games with Crosby and Malkin going like they are right now, and with the defense as well, playing as well as it has. And I know you have a story on Tristan Jarry coming up, so I think we kind of glossed over Tristan at the start. But I've been impressed.
Oh, you saw it in my drafts. That's how I'm like,
I
how do you know
yeah.
that?
I'm teasing it. I'm teasing it. But I wanted you to also give the folks a taste of what you're going to focus on there. Because for me, I think this is more of a confidence and reps issue for Jarry. So I see he and Malkin on a similar trajectory where they just didn't have enough reps early in the season to feel like themselves.
A lot of goaltenders around the league. If you look at the save percentages of some of the best in the NHL, they're all suppressed to this point because they didn't get enough rubber in training camp, or they didn't have those practices before training camp with, what do they call those? Captains practices, when you've got a dozen or more guys firing on the goalie. They didn't have that this year leading up to the 1 week training camp. So it took goalies, I think, longer to get in that groove. And for whatever reason, starting goalies seem to be even more affected than the backup goalies. Perhaps it's just being used to that mindset of playing cold. I don't know. This is what happens when you've got a top end number one goalie. I don't want to put the boots to Matt Murray. I should just say his name and be blunt about it. I don't want to put the boots to Murray. But Murray was increasingly figured out by NHL shooters, which is what some idiot warned about several years ago, that you can't really judge a goalie for several years or 100 games. Well, Matt Jarry has gone through those several year process where he played 26 NHL games and then got sent back to the minors for the better part of 2 years. That is a mental sharpening tool and a physical sharpening tool. So we're seeing the best of Tristan Jarry, and this is what happens when you've got a talented goalie whose steel was forged in the fire. You get points sometimes when you don't deserve them. You get an extra point sometimes when you quit in the third period. And that is probably one of the biggest differences of this Penguins team, and why if they do make the playoffs this year, they'll be more dangerous than they have in the last couple or a few years, simply because of goaltending and the ability to steal a game.
One last thing before we go, and it's more tangential to the Penguins, but it is big news in the hockey world, and I saw you replied to a comment about it in our live chat. But reports out of Canada, Chris Johnston of Sportsnet, saying first yesterday that ESPN and the NHL are getting back into bed together. 7-year deal is going to be announced very soon, including, this is interesting too, ESPN will get 4 of those 7 Cup finals on its airwaves. ESPN/ABC, I should say, Disney conglomerate will be back in with hockey. I love it. I know that some folks feel like, screw ESPN. They didn't want it in the hockey game back 15 years ago, coming out of the full season lockout. But I thought it was a huge mistake that the NHL stuck with just NBC and their family of networks for the previous deal. I get it, coming out of the lockout. NBC was the only network that really stuck out its neck and wanted to be part of the hockey business in any functional way. So I understood the loyalty, but you look at every other sport, Dan, no other sport cordons itself off into one family of networks or one company, one media company. You see the NBA, MLB, any major league basically does it on 2, if not more, possible outlets on television. I know that streaming's big, and I know ESPN Plus has been carrying some games previously in the last couple of years, but TV's still king, and I see this as a very significant move for the NHL.
It is, because more people still watch the NHL or watch ESPN than any other sports network. Yep. I do not think under any circumstances is this NBC plan where they put some games on the USA Network and they spread them around to their different properties. That's silliness, because no one's watching the USA Network going, I wonder if there's hockey on tonight. They're waiting for Meghan Markle reruns of Suits.
Topical, good stuff.
Thank you. Just came to me. The problem with ESPN, and I'm hesitant with everybody else as well. Will they show hockey the proper respect, or will it be like a little purse dog? They just tote around to look cute and say they have it, but it really doesn't mean anything to them. I want to see genuine hockey coverage. I want to see somebody bring the real context and real flavor to the game. I want to see these things. I don't want. I mean, I like Barry Melrose, and he brings some of that old school hockey flavor. But I want to see those guys talking about hockey, and I don't want to see it fluffed off, and I don't want to see the studio shows with Stephen A. Smith who doesn't know hockey, and I don't want to see their normal personalities who treat hockey as a fourth sport. I want to see first sport people who genuinely use the platform to not only bring the actual on ice game to a larger audience, but explain what it means. Explain so many of the nuances and the unwritten rules and the push and the pushback and who will defend the game and not be sort of the American blogger who hates the NHL. And if they can do those things, then I think it will be a great move for the NHL. But if they get a couple highlights at the back of SportsCenter, and if they get just lip service, I think you're going to see hockey fans take out their.
Well, I think that it's very much about the on-air talent during the games. Excuse me. And ESPN could probably afford to fill out its roster in that regard. I see Keith Thomas saying on the chat that ESPN doesn't really have hockey people. I would object to that. They still have guys like Steve Levy. Well, I shouldn't say guys. People like Steve Levy, Linda Cohn.
Linda Cohn is a huge hockey person, yeah.
Yeah, John Butchergrass, my goodness, not just the NHL, but college hockey for him too. So there are plenty of people there at ESPN who believe in hockey, and I think they had fought over the years to include it more into coverage, even when ESPN/ABC didn't have the games. Now, I'm also concerned, like you say, the concerns are valid because prior to the previous deal running out with ESPN ABC, you saw more and more games pushed from ESPN to ESPN2. You saw just less coverage of hockey on all the supporting programming, if you will, your sports centers, et cetera. Now, that type of stuff is less important now. No one's really tuning into Sports Center to see highlights necessarily. They want to see analysis. They want to see things broken down. So, again, there's plenty to be proven here. But also keep in mind, there's still another half of this package basically available. And I think that a network like CBS also is a possibility here. Look at their holdings right now. They have college basketball, college football, they have PGA Tour golf, and they have football in the fall. But that's it. They could really use a winter and springtime fill. They could use some more inventory to be filled. So I think don't just say that it's going to be NBC here. I think CBS could really step in, or maybe even Fox as well. There's plenty of opportunities here.
Yeah, as long as Fox doesn't bring back the glow puck again, I think we're good.
The new generation glow puck could be okay. Maybe a shadow as opposed to a blinding glow.
Yeah, if they can darken it, maybe to enlarge it just a hair. You know, that's an interesting. I hadn't considered CBS because they put a couple of those tertiary networks. They might have to interrupt John Taffer screaming at a bar owner and put it on the Paramount Network or the 18th rerunning of John Wick some nights. But
they
yeah,
have CBS Sports Network too, so they have a possibility there as well.
Yeah, but does anyone actually get the CBS Sports Network?
Yeah, not as much as NBC Sports Network. So that would be that'd be a concern there. For me, maybe if you had to pick a network that isn't NBC to take this, it'd probably be Fox because they do have a history with the NHL. But yeah, I was just throwing that out there because I do feel like there's an opportunity for maybe a CBS, do something different. They've never had the NHL.
Whatever it is, I think the NHL has a very unique chance right now. While Sidney Crosby is still playing at a high level, while Connor McDavid has arrived, and you wonder who else is going to join that list. Nathan McKinnon also plays in a U.S. city. And there's a lot of very good U.S. teams. And maybe Carolina is finally forging a fan base. So you have new markets emerging, not just those flash in the pan, gimmicky Sunbelt teams, but now maybe building real audiences. You have those things. I don't think they can look just at dollars and cents. And I know that's terrible to say coming out of this pandemic when ads on helmets and digital ads on the glass were necessary just to play this season. But looking ahead 5 years, 10 years, growing the game and really cementing it with the explosion of youth hockey that we've seen across the United States. Dallas is up to 7 rinks, I think, or maybe even more than that over the last couple of years. Those markets are now into their second and third generations. So growing those is really essential to the league, and they can't fritter that away by taking a few extra bucks from, say, a CBS to be on CBS Network, which not enough fans get. So that I think will be very interesting to see what happens next.
And the proportion of games on broadcast versus cable, something to be discussed. As Dave Gormley mentioned, CBS now has Paramount Plus. Everyone's got a Plus streaming service these days. So
yeah, it used to be cheaper to not have cable, but now you have to buy Paramount, you have to buy Hulu, Amazon, Netflix. Who am I missing? Paramount Plus, the Peacock Network, the Apple Channel.
Yep.
Yeah, that's annoying. Stop it, everybody. Stop it.
Amazon Prime. Yeah, you forgot about that one too.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So there was about a 10-minute span when the consumer could get by a little more cheaply after pulling the plug, but not anymore, I suppose. All right. Well, anyway, good news, I would say, overall, even though there are caveats to it. I would also say the same thing about the Penguins here. They'll head into Buffalo. We'll talk to you with another PHN Pens regroup coming up on Friday morning. So we'll go for the morning after treatment again. First meeting with the Sabres. We'll see how that goes. Do the Penguins continue their role, or do they make it interesting, more interesting than it should be against the last place Sabres? Dan, thank you. I'll talk to you then.
Have fun.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks again for joining us.